Okay, hi guys. Today we are going to revisit the subject of white monadic Illuminist meritocracy, and we're going to touch on the Jacobins quickly and cover a YouTube comment and get into some more ontological mathematics of the monad and demonstrate how it supports the idea of supporting race, especially white people. So we had a question or a comment from Aces411. And he quotes from Mark Rommel in Social Capitalism. Why are there people who follow you who promote white nationalism, Nazism, anti-feminism, and other forms of extremism? Why do they call themselves meritocrats? This book was like 6 or 7 years old, so it's weird. It's almost as if, these people are like traveling through time or something like that, because this is a strange question for that time period. Nobody was doing anything like this. And I mean, there's no anti-feminists around. Certainly back then, I mean, there's no Nazis around. I mean, I'm not even a Nazi, of course. White nationalism, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that necessarily at all, of course. Why do they call themselves meritocrats? Because there's lots of ontological mathematical justification for that, because European white people is where ontological mathematics and Illuminism came from. So why wouldn't you want to continue supporting that culture? So it's a very strange question that it appeared however old this book is, 6 or 7 years ago. Very strange. So anyway, this fellow mentions that, well, this is the answer. First off, meritocracy is a universalist and Jacobin project. And the central tenets of meritocracy repudiate racism and misogyny, amongst other things. I mean, this is just extremely woke, right? There's nothing necessarily wrong with racism. I mean, where do you come up? I mean, the whole term racism is the stupidest word created in history. It's only a word that's used to attack one people, and it's used to attack European people. That's it. That's all it's used for. Misogyny, I'm not sure of anyone. I mean, that's not a big movement. Nobody's hating women, especially white men. White men are the least likely people of all to hate women. You find women hate frequently, and the other cultures which for some reason you want to make part of Illuminism, you want to make Islam, the Arab world, and all the Muslims and the Islamics, they're part of Illuminism. Why? That's where you find women hate. Anyway, it's all just so stupid. So I'm not sure who these people are. What's funny is people seem to not detect that there's a split personality in the work. I mean, it was always apparent, especially after the Hockney crisis occurred, that there was a real split personality in the work. The Jacobins seem to be trying to associate themselves with ontological mathematics, even though they have nothing to do with it. And this book, actually, in any case, it's funny that this quote is in this book, but that's what you get in a lot of their writing. You get them say one thing, and then they do another thing. And it's quite funny when they do that. They're just trolling you, or they're just trying to see what your reaction is, or who you follow, or which way you side on. Anyway, this book actually has quite a bit of positive things to say about National Socialist Germany and how it tried to work as a functional state to protect the people from the parasitic capitalists and bankers and whatnot. So it's just funny because, yeah, this book is says a lot of good things about National Socialist Germany. Anyway, so then this fellow answered for me. One should understand that meritocracy itself is a Western cultural phenomenon. That's right, meritocracy is a Western cultural phenomenon. Who the hell are you to think that you can apply that to other cultures, right? It comes from Plato's philosopher king and the Republic, as is rationalism, the Logos Jungian psychology. I would go so far as to say that these concepts are the foundation of Western thought and culture. Yes, of course they are. Illuminism is, ontological mathematics and meritocracy. Those are European ideals. Those are born from European philosophy, which is very hard won for, right? And so, yeah, I just agreed with that. These are all Western cultural concepts. They are distinctly and uniquely developed in the European people. So let's talk a little bit more about that. So why this cultural imposition that the Jacobins want to apply for all of us, on behalf of all of us? Why would we have this uniquely European or white cultural je ne sais quoi, where Illuminism and ontological mathematics is a unique product born out of the genetic European spirit and its integrated history from men and women who supported a regular occurrence of 150 plus IQ people. And then for no reason whatsoever, just completely out of the blue, here come in the Jacobins and they say, you know what? This is made valid only if we include other people who had nothing to do with it. Now, please make that make sense for me. Make it make sense. As I was describing in my last video, the development of ontological mathematics and Illuminism and meritocracy, that was inborn in the European people, in the European spirit, and everything that we fought for, right? Especially the mathematics part. It was part of the culture of exploration, and conquering unknown lands. We needed astronomy in order to do sailing well. In order to do astronomy well, we needed to do mathematics. In order to do mathematics, we had to do insane amounts of abstract thinking requiring IQ of 140, 150, 160 plus. Okay? And that, of course, then translated, the philosophers were often astronomers as well, right? So it's all connected. It's inborn. Ontological mathematics and Illuminism is inborn, and no one else came close. No one else came close. This is ontological mathematics, meritocracy, Illuminism, is a European white cultural phenomenon. No one else has anything close. And a lot of people like to bring up, oh, well, the Chinese invented gunpowder. It's like, oh, okay. In any of the very rare cases where somebody else had actually done something else, European people took that and did things with it that the other cultures had never even dreamed of or thought of, the other races. Okay? So make it make sense. Why would the Jacobins come in and say, all of this European culture, all of this European history, all of this stuff that European people died for, Giordano Bruno burnt at the stake, and many others, right? Hypatia killed by these savages, right? Why would you come in and then say, you know what, all that history is only valid if we include other people who had nothing to do with it? That makes no fucking sense. Okay? What gives you the right to impose your culture on other people? I mean, isn't that the whole racist thing that you guys hate, is imposing your culture on others? So why are you doing that with this? Do you feel that you're better than them and you need to tell them the correct way to be like Europeans? That's what you're doing. You want to go into Africa and China and India and say, you know what, you guys aren't being good enough. You're not valid on your own. You need to be like Europeans and live in this way that where we develop. I mean, why would you feel the need to do that? Why are you doing that? I mean, do you feel that they're not valid? Are those other cultures not valid without the presence of European culture? I mean, you're either narcissistic or you're the actual racist, right? It actually turns out that the people who are the actual racists, who understand race, are actually the least racist people of all. They're the kindest people. Whereas the anti-racist people, you're actually the worst kind of racist. You're the bad kind of racist. There's like bad kind of racist and good kind of racist. The good kind of racist recognizes the value and the independence of other races. The bad racists want to make everyone just like European people, just like white people, and assume that black people are only valid if they're living like white people, right? I mean, it's either narcissistic or the bad type of racist. Now, what gives you the right to impose other cultures on your own, right? Do you feel that your own culture and people are incomplete, and therefore you need to make other people responsible for completing your culture for you? Is that it? So you're going to impose the responsibility that Somalians have to improve your culture on your behalf? So you're going to make that's what you're doing. You're going to make it the responsibility of Indians or Chinese people or black people to complete your culture? Why don't you complete your culture? Why don't you improve your culture for your people? But no, you're imposing it on. You see how this just makes no sense? And I'll explain why it makes no sense. Because it's fake. Because it's part of a war. So the Jacobin elements seem to be sidlers. They're writing beside ontological mathematics in stolen valor. And I would just point out, where is their ontological mathematics to prove that the Illuminist meritocratic people must accommodate those who do not necessarily function in such a state? Where's the math? Because I'm going to show the math which demonstrates supporting European culture in just a sec using the monad. So Darwin's finches, let's use the example of Darwin's finches. So the idea is that there was one island with finches that had short and thick, strong beaks because they had to crack nuts. And then there was a different island with finches, and these finches could interbreed, but those finches had long, skinny beaks for eating seeds or something like that, something else, right? So now let's say that one day a bunch of long, thin-beaked finches go over to the thick beak island, right? But they can't eat anything, right? So now one of the one of the short beak finches says, well, let's help them, and we'll crack a few nuts for them to eat. And the long beak finches say, okay, thanks. Wow, this food is really good. I really like what you've done with this place. Thanks for cracking those nuts open for me. Then they leave, but then they come back with a bunch more thin long beak finches. And they say, hey, remember how you made all that really great food for us? Now you need to make more. Like the long beak finches can't survive in the thick short beak finch environment because they can't crack the nuts for food. So now if you impose that the thick short beak finches have to provide the food and the resources for the thin long beak finches, what happens? They actually become enslaved. It was their land originally, but now the other finches come in, and now the original finches are now enslaved because now they have to produce all the food for the long beak finches. All right. Anyway, so it's kind of a silly little analogy, but that's the idea. Are you really sure that you should mix up cultures like that? For example, so what gives you the right to perform that social experiment? In the US, a lot of people are getting killed due to this social experiment. A lot of people are getting killed, black people. And, they did the, in this whole quest to prove that it's all born out of white people being racist when they're not racist at all. White people aren't racist at all. They put the body cams on the police officers, and then they wanted to get rid of that after a couple of years because what did the data show? The data showed that the police officers were not at all racist and just shooting black people for fun for no reason. And the stats actually showed that they would shoot white people statistically per capita more often and more readily than they would black people. And so they didn't like the stats of that. It's just incompatibility. This tabula rasa experiment where we're going to just treat all the other races as equal and having no inborn properties, you're killing people. It's killing a lot of people, right? It's getting a lot of black people shot and killed by cops and getting them put in prison. And it's getting a lot of white women raped. And it's just not a very good situation. Okay, so there's some sort of split personality within the books, plus some crisis event occurred with the end of Hockney. Many of you don't remember that or weren't there, but Hockney was the main writer, or the three original writers, and those are still really the best books. The books from Michael Faust and Adam Weishaupt and Mike Hockney, those are really still the best ones. But some crisis event occurred, and it seemed like Hockney got taken over. So remember, here is the equation for the monad. I've updated a little bit, so now n goes from alpha to omega. So that's a kind of a nice way to put it, alpha to omega. Alpha and omega, so alpha is the first frequency, omega is the last frequency. So you have r, the radius of the circling, and you have this term which gives the constant speed through numbers, or the different angular velocities, which gives different frequencies. And then you have this phi term. And so I'm just showing this here again to show that, this was why I liked this symbol so much, because if you were to write this equation symbolically in a rock, carved into a rock 3,000 years ago, and you're trying to depict this idea of points going around a circle, well, this in its static form, I suppose, I can't stop it, this in its static form would be a good way to do that, good way to represent that, because it represents that there's a radius, and then it represents that there's a trailing movement, which indicates or implies movement, circular movement around the center. Yeah? Okay, so here we are. So here's a big equation again. So let's discuss how this supports the idea of of perhaps there is a racial component to monadic evolution in the universe. So as above, so below as above. So as a monad solves its constant phi. So remember, the idea is that when you get a new universe, that all the monads get their frequencies scrambled up. Well, how are you going to do that? How are you going to scramble up the frequencies? I mean, the radii have to stay the radii. So what exactly can be scrambled up about a monad? So the idea here is that it starts off, and so this is a function of n. So it's just from 0 to 1, which just means from alpha to omega, and this is the phi. So between minus pi to pi, minus 180 degrees to 180 degrees. And the idea is that when a new universe starts, the monad becomes scrambled. All of the phi's become basically a random function of r. And so it's just totally scrambled. But over time, this random function of r for phi becomes constant because that's simple. So cosmology indicates that the last universe transition was in an extremely highly ordered state. So Rn, the radius, each radius is the thought. Remember Mike Hockney explained that a basis circling is a basis thought, right? Okay, so each given radius is going to be a given thought. But then what distinguishes, or how do you create uniqueness for each monad? Well, the only way to create uniqueness is to change the phi for each monad, right? And if it starts off in a scrambled state, then the only way to create that, since this, you can't change this is just the radius, and this is just the movement around for the radius, the only way to give this thing uniqueness is with the phi term, the phase term. And then over time, you would say that it would be plausible that the whole process of becoming, the whole process of evolution, soul evolution, and creating rational and coordinated and thought and clear thought, is that this random function of phi becomes a constant, right? So phi of Rn becomes phi naught, and that would indicate perfect alignment of all thoughts, right? But now that might happen if you apply the principle so below as above. That happens for the universe as a whole too. So now this is a function of all monads, and all monads have random phis all over the place, but altogether they all develop and evolve into having a constant phi, so that all monads share the exact same alignment of thoughts, right? Because that would be an extremely highly ordered state, which we have evidence of, that's what the transition at the beginning between the last universe and this one was like. That was its state, extremely, extremely highly ordered. Well, the only way to produce that state from this equation of base existence, the monad, would be to make the phi be a constant across all monads. And so here what I kind of simulated is that you get groupings of phi's. So you get groupings of stability, and then eventually they just all sort of snap together and all become the same thing. So this might be for a single monad, but both of these could apply to a single monad. So a single monad has a random distribution of phi, and then over time it solves more and more of itself, making more and more of itself have equal phi, and then eventually, once it's close enough, it just sort of snaps in real quick. I mean, I could do a better simulation of that, but whatever, it kind of gets the idea across. So you can see regions of stability where adjacent radii, adjacent thoughts are becoming aligned with each other, and more do that over time, and then once they get really close, then they just realize they can all snap together and become constant, right? And so just as a single monad evolves, its circlings this way, its frequencies this way, its phases this way, so the entire grand monad, the whole universe, all souls, are undergoing that process as well. Okay? And so that would justify that regions of stability where you find species or races which seem to be automatically self-sustaining and self-organizing their thoughts, that's what you want to do, right? And the European people, the white people, demonstrate that self-sustaining self-organization of thoughts over time. It really seems to be imbued in the genetic structure. It's coded in European people to undergo that process because they have the curious exploration spirit. They question authority, and they're willing to sacrifice themselves and risk their own lives to question authority in the pursuit of knowledge, right? So you have, and then the empirical history of Europe is that it did indeed evolve its rationalism and thought and its alignment of thought until it got to the point where it was able to integrate all of this knowledge and write down ontological mathematics and explain how the universe works and what it is. So in that case, it's all very highly consistent, and it would indicate that there was definitely a support, an ontological support and desire and justification to support races which are self-sustaining in the self-organization of their thoughts, right? And that you can directly demonstrate that through the monad equation, okay? And so I'd like to see the Jacobins demonstrate why they think that this equation demonstrates that you shouldn't support the meritocratic peoples and the people who supported and who had it built within them and coded within them to develop ontological mathematics. So we are in a war for reason. This was hammered into you throughout all of the Hackney God series and Illuminism books, that we are in a war for reason. God's sakes, we're in a war for reason. So is importing 75 average IQ Muslims into 135 average IQ Sweden and etc., because that's happening all over the place in European countries, is that improving the meritocracy and increasing the reason in those countries? Is that what's really happening? Stop being so stupid. Or would it be more rational to view that process as an indication of the war against reason? This is being done to all European countries and European colonies. Is this a sign of improving meritocracy and reason? Importing all the Muslims and other people from cultures which simply have lower net IQ, average IQ, is that really a sign of meritocracy and developing the future? And is it going to promote the development of ontological mathematics and Illuminism in the Star Trek future? Or is it a sign of the war that we're in, which Hackney repeatedly said and explained that we're in a war for reason? And it's meant to destroy the people who have it genetically encoded within themselves to develop ontological mathematics, meritocracy in the Star Trek future. It's built in to the European people. It's built in that we developed and that we went through this history of development of ontological mathematics. It's built in that we will automatically produce the Star Trek future of meritocracy. So if we're in a war for this future, if we're in a war to defend reason, which Mike Hackney explained in every single book, on almost every single page, that we're in, then how do you explain this phenomenon? Is it supporting the development of meritocracy and the Star Trek future, or is it actually fighting against it because it's fighting against and destroying the people who are going to develop that future? You think that you're going to get the Star Trek future by importing 75 IQ Muslims into Sweden and then asking them to give it to you, as if they need to give it to you, as if it's their responsibility to give that to your future? I mean, it's all just part of the psyop of the enemy of reason. Stop being so stupid. Of course it's not helping. Of course you're not going to be able to just ask. It is going to require violence, a lot of violence, in order to get the Star Trek meritocracy future based on ontological mathematics. You're not going to get it by asking. That's just a simple fact. Again, no one is going to honor us for losing gracefully. Islam will happily take over all of Europe and laugh when the last white woman is raped to death and the last white man is beheaded for being an infidel. That will be success for them. That is how they will measure success, is how many infidels they've killed and how many infidels they've converted to Islam. Now, for what purpose is that serving meritocracy ontological mathematics in the future? No, of course not. So why are the Jacobins, these supposed Jacobins and other people that are supposedly Illuminists, why do you not care about that? And why are you not horrified by it? So you have a false consciousness. You've been programmed with a false consciousness by the enemy to support policies which destroy yourself. And in destroying yourself, you're destroying the possibility of the future, of a meritocratic future based on ontological mathematics and meritocracy and Illuminism. All you have to do is support Europe and European people and get it back on track. Okay, support this work. Bitcoin, Ethereum. One person was asking how to get a hold of me, so there's my name, Joe Postma, at live.ca. That's my email. I think it's also in the description section of the YouTube channel. So just go there. Of course, there's my books as well, and yeah, there's my blog. You can just comment on my blog, and your first comment there will probably be moderated, but I should get it and see it, and it won't publicize your email, but I'll see your email privately if you want to comment there, or you can leave a fake email and we can just comment through the comment section there if you like as well too. And of course, Climate of Sophistry is my climate website where I started on this whole application of ontological mathematics to a real world practical problem, which you can read about, of course, through this sequence of these books. All right, so guys, hope you like that, and that's a very nice way to write the equation. And so hope you like that, and take care. Bye.